Hi, I'm Debbie Moraes, and this is Legal Matters, the program that's designed to address some relevant, controversial, and sometimes very critical issues facing businesses and consumers today. It's legal information, it's practical solutions, and it's straight talk about a wide variety of topics. Recently, we've talked about business startups, healthcare reform, loan reforms, various issues that affect homeowners as well as businesses. Often we've given you some practical tips, some websites that you might want to consult with, and we'll continue to do that as we continue today. In our last discussions, we covered the attorney-client privilege and the attorney-client relationship as it is relevant to being the most sacrosanct of relationships. Hope you tuned in. Today we are going to talk about not only speaking up and speaking out, but also speaking up using the technologies and the wonderful technologies that are available today. With us we have a new guest. We have Chris Egling, who is with the law firm as a student at Odette Bazar Cordero Grasso Law Firm in East Providence, and we welcome you. And once again, David Grasso.
Thank you. David Bazar.
David Bazar,
Jackie
because
Grasso.
Jackie Grasso, excuse me, is not with us today. Recently, there was an issue that took place in New Jersey. And let me just set this up and have both Chris and David weigh in on it. In New Jersey, two middle school students who were friends had the boy send a filthy text message to the girl. The two parents are friends, and they both coach in the school. It might seem logical that the boy's father and the girl's father might get together and have a discussion about this, the girl's father being the most concerned, and he might want to discuss this with the boy's father. What would you consider might happen? Could it be that the two would discuss this together? Would they call the police? Would they call in the school? Would they end up just pulling the kids' text messages and cell phones and just circumventing everything? What would you say? And I would like to ask Chris and David, but what would you say considering that parents do have some responsibility here, but it's really an open ball game? Chris, do you want to start? Want to say something about this?
I feel like it's easy for us to sit back and say parents should step in and do something when, aside from taking away the phones, there's really not much you can do. Cell phones, predominantly, you can be texting, doing anything, and it's a pretty private process. Unfortunately, everything that's sent out is not as private. So, you know, in school, since I've been in middle school and high school, and since texting has really taken off, there will be either unspoken rules, or the teacher will come out and say, obviously, no texting in class, no doing this, no fiddling around on the internet. But it's really hard to control, aside from taking away the phones. You know, you can kids are texting under the table all the time, and it's pretty much hard to stop. So aside from taking away the phones, there's really not much they can do.
So what's the legal issue here, David?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, to just comment on what Chris said, parents are still parents. It's their responsibility. The buck stops with them, so to speak. And as Chris said, people think that they send something to each other that's private and it's between the two of them, but it's not. It can get forwarded accidentally or on purpose, and it's the subject of a lot of information I give to my daughter, for example, who Chris knows is in college as well. When she applied for a job at college, she had stuff on Facebook, on the internet. I said, that's not something that, if you're not proud of it, you want up there, because when you apply for a job, your potential employer can look at it. So you have to think more than just, I'm going to push send on this button and it's going to go to a friend. It may go somewhere else. So it's not private conversation. Legally, is it at this point a legal issue that involves schools or police or not? It depends exactly what was sent. If we're talking about sending photos of somebody, inappropriate photos, sexually explicit photos, then it can become a legal issue. And we've talked, I think, in the past a little bit about sexting and the implications of that. So it depends exactly where we are in your story.
Well, if I tell you that instead of the father talking to the father, instead of having that personal confrontation, instead it went to the school. So legally, while the father of the girl said, it's the school's responsibility, you should make sure that you take care of this and texting shouldn't be done. Does the school have the responsibility of taking care of what could or could not have been sent during school time? It might have been sent 3 o'clock on a Saturday evening when the child wasn't in school. Whose responsibility? Who's legally responsible for this?
Let's talk about two things there, and I'm going to throw one of those things back to Chris. The school's responsibility is only for what happens at school. And frankly, as you said, there's no information from what you've given us so far that these texts were sent during school time. Schools have certain rules about technology and the use of technology. Chris is in college. Tell us a little bit about your school and what they do with technology.
In terms of the guidelines, they're pretty much the first day you get in, everybody says, don't text, all the teachers. There will be signs on the walls, everything, don't text. Also, and it was the same in high school, your computers are monitored, so whatever sites that we go on within the school network, they are able to check, and if you're on something inappropriate or doing something inappropriate, they have a switch where they can shut it down, and they can take away. A lot of my friends have had their internets taken away for, downloading music, anything like that. So there are precautions they can take in that sense. With cell phones, though, it's hard unless you just say drop your phones in the bin before you go to class.
Yes, and at the college level, there are colleges that will also say if we find that there's something on Facebook with your message, your nude picture, or something that's that inappropriate, that the student might actually be fined. So they're asking them to take some responsibility. But now with this being a middle school child, 12, 13-year-old, do the parents have to be responsible for what the child sends to another child? Is the parent of the boy responsible?
We'll take that a step further. A 12-year-old sends something inappropriate to another 12-year-old, 13-year-old, whatever, 14-year-old. That person then sends it to a 21-year-old. And now we have someone who may be in possession of what could be classified as child pornography.
Yes.
And there is a legal issue and legal implications there. Certainly the youngster who took the picture of herself or himself could be charged with the same thing. And I know Rhode Island has at least taken up in legislation, I'm not sure if it's been passed, some laws regarding sexting, because the difficulty is right now, if they haven't changed the law, the charges are charges that carry a lifetime implication of registering as a sex offender and being carried through for the rest of your life, even if you're a youngster at the time you did it. The person who's got that picture on their phone now, that's 21, can be charged with child pornography, and it becomes much more of a legal issue under those circumstances than nasty messages being sent back and forth between two kids, where if I were the parent, I would take the phone away. And until you know how to use it properly, you're not going to use it. It's not a school issue at that point. The school issue is what Chris was referring to, kids at class. Now, I would have a problem if I'm a professor teaching and I've got kids texting in my class, especially if there's a test going on. How do I know they're not sending answers back and forth? Do they deal with that?
They try to. Like I said, there's not much they can do. And there's definitely
except take the phones
that goes
away.
On with phones.
Yeah.
Well, in addition to the nastiness, there's also the issue about cyberbullying, and I'm sure you've read or heard in the news where some child actually committed suicide because there were terrible things circulated about her in the, on the internet. And in the case of this New Jersey principal, he actually ended up saying no socializing on the net. How he can actually, he can suggest that, he can't enforce that. But clearly there was a time when it was only that the parents would be together, or if it were something that was very nasty, maybe you'd end up calling the police if it was the photo, and if it were a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old or whatever. But I think it really does raise some very interesting issues, as you're both indicating, that there's no such thing, I think, that you can keep people from using social media. That is the wave of the future. And in fact, many college admissions officers are looking at those Facebook pages as a way of getting some input as to what that student's character, interests, and everything else are. But using it properly is obviously something parents should be involved in. And I still guess, I wonder, David, when it comes to this father and this mother of the girl saying, Mr. Principal, you need to take care of this, is this really something that absolves the father of that boy completely because now it's in the principal's court?
No, it doesn't. There's a couple of things you need to think about. We've talked about this a little bit. The internet and cell phones and all of that technology has taken communications and made communication much easier. On the other hand, it's made it much more impersonal. There's always been bullying in schools and that type of thing, face to face.